Well, thanks everybody for coming.
Did he give us the heads up yet?
He did.
All right,
Yeah,
excellent.
we got the green light to go. So first of all, I'm just going to read a short bio of our two guests today. So Bryan is the Executive VP at Advantus Corp. Bryan works with his team to solve complex problems in product development, operations, information technology, and acquisition evaluation and integration, and also provides support, leadership, and strategy across all shared service departments. Having joined Advantus as a part of an acquisition over 17 years ago, he is passionate about integrating teams and continually learning and leveraging best practices across departments and divisions in a way that scales. Advantus has acquired over 30 brands and companies and manufactures and distributes products from in and across many countries and consumer product channels, including all the major retailers in the United States. He recently led a successful 5-year company-wide transition to the Oracle NetSuite business operating system across all Advantus facilities, countries, departments, and processes. He enjoys architecture and design, running, traveling, this is a great one, trying weird donuts, learning, serving in church and community, and loves being a husband and father most of all. So thank you for being here, Bryan.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Peggy Evleth. Peggy assists clients in successfully implementing new technologies to better manage and grow their businesses. With over 20 years of experience implementing ERP solutions, she brings a wealth of experience to the NetSuite team. Having had the opportunity to work with a wide variety of industries and business environments, her premier area of specialty is working with international clients. She has a strong understanding of international subsidiaries and their business, and has worked extensively with multi-company and multi-book environments. She is bilingual in French and spent 10 years living in Paris. So this brings unique perspective in her international implementation experience. In her spare time, Peggy is a ski patroller, she just mentioned, in the winter. And in the summer, she rock climbs and hikes with her dogs. So thank you, Peggy. Well, great. Well, first, Bryan, will you just tell us a little bit about Advantus? We got a little bit in your bio, but tell us about the company.
Yeah. Advantus is really a company that we buy and build consumer products, brands, and companies. I joined the company 17 years ago with an acquisition. Our headquarters are in Florida, but we've got a number of offices and warehouses around the country in the US and in a couple other countries as well. But we're not really like a PE firm or a VC group where we might buy and then build and then spin them off. We'll typically retain those brands and those companies and continue to grow them and build them really indefinitely. So my background is in industrial design, and I did a little bit of mechanical engineering and switched to industrial design. And then I joined the company with an acquisition, as was mentioned. Do you want me to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting story.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll pretend we're all in like a living room and you guys we're all seated together and get a little personal here. So when I was in school, I came here I grew up in Georgia, went to school at BYU, had an internship in Pennsylvania and then China and Shanghai. And then when I graduated, my wife and I got married. My wife's here with us. So she's supporting me. I started working with a local entrepreneur here that some of you may know, Warren Osborne, and we helped grow a couple products and companies, and it was awesome. It was just like jet fuel. Just learned a ton. It was fantastic. Kind of one of the crowning events we had was we helped develop the Blu-ray case, one of the Blu-ray cases that's out on the market today, and we sold that to Warner Brothers, and that was just an awesome, really cool experience. Really stressful. At the time we did that, my wife, we had a 2-year-old boy, and my wife had just given birth to our daughter, and my wife had some complications after giving birth. We couldn't figure out what was wrong, and turned out she had a brain tumor in the middle of her brain. Luckily, she was able to get surgery, but after surgery, she came out not being able to talk or walk and feed herself, and it was super stressful. And I remember talking to a friend, and he said, Bryan, the stress scale doesn't go from 1 to 10. You think it's 1 to 10, but it's 1 to 100. And I felt just so stressed. At the time, I was like, what's the simplest job I can do? And I would fantasize about that. But at the same time, we were going through that experience. Warren and I, we closed on the purchase of a company, a scrapbooking company. At the time, scrapbooking was super hot, at least here in the Valley, and we thought, oh, there's no way we can go wrong. But it was a good team, but they had some financial challenges that weren't really disclosed, so we ended up selling that company a year later to Advantus. So Advantus said, hey, Bryan, we'd love for you to come with us. I had no interest at all. If I saw another piece of scrapbook paper, I would have just thrown up. But because they said I could work from home, which 17 years ago was a big deal, now it's quite a bit more common, I said, that's great, I'll try it for a year. And fast forward, we've now raised our kids, and I've grown a little bit more in Advantus, and we moved out to Atlanta, and I did my executive MBA out there, and then I picked up IT and a couple other departments, and just continued to grow in the company. I've really loved it. And I'm happy to say my son, who was 2 then, is now in London serving a church mission, and my daughter just graduated, and she's at college, and my wife's here and spunky as ever, and we're doing really well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Bryan. Peggy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience and how you came to RSM?
Okay. So I had been in the consulting space for a while, but had been working in private industry. Basically, to rewind, my career started as an accountant. So my area of accounting specialty was foreign currency accounting and international consolidations. So you pretty niche there. It's kind of very specific specialty. So don't ask me anything else significantly about accounting, but if you want to know foreign currency, I'm happy to talk about it. People think it's a bit strange, but that's okay. So I was a global controller before I moved into the ERP world. I'd been doing that for a while, either consulting or working in a business analyst type environment. I was working for actually an RSM client, and they had downsized, and I was suddenly looking for a new opportunity. But the controller had contacts with RSM because they were the auditors for that company. He handed my resume over to RSM, and that's kind of how I ended up there. I started in the GP practice, Great Plains, for people who may be familiar with that. That's a product that Microsoft has officially sunsetted, so it's going away. But about 6 years ago, I joined the NetSuite practice with the optic of really working on a lot of global engagements, and that's what I do. So I've been with RSM about 13 years now, and right now my focus is on NetSuite global delivery. So I do, all of the projects I do basically are international in scope.
Peggy gets all the easy projects, so fantastic. Bryan, I know as a firm, Advantus has gone through a pretty significant digital transformation. Do you want to tell us and talk to us more about when you knew it was time to?
What were we thinking?
Yeah. What were you thinking? Why?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, so I did my MBA out of Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech's pretty strong in technology and engineering, and I'd go to class, and I did the executive programs. I'd go to class on the weekends, and I'd work during the week. And it really made it pretty obvious that there were a lot of other cool platforms and technologies out there that we could take advantage of. I don't have a background in computer science or technology, but I've always loved it. I think technology is a great enabling tool. And so when after I finished my program, I got promoted, and they said, do you want to take IT? And I must have been the biggest dummy in the room, because I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But I really do love IT. But at the time, one of the things I remember thinking really clearly was we needed to get off-prem. So Advantus, as Dave mentioned, we've purchased a lot of other companies and a lot of other brands. And we were originally formed in 2001 between the merger of 2 companies. And at that time, they basically said, well, which operating system are we going to use, yours or ours? And they adopted Macola, which was what the other company was using. Probably no one has heard of Macola. I don't know. Maybe you have.
When I was a controller,
Okay.
way back when, we had Macola.
All right,
So I have
so-
heard of it and I have used it.
Yeah, it's not a bad program. It just has certain limitations. But at the time, it was just a simpler company.
Yeah.
With each year of additional acquisitions and cobbling on new pieces, it kind of felt like, and I've used this analogy internally, it felt like we had this airplane that at the time was a really good propeller plane, but we added like an engine here and a cockpit, another cockpit here, and more seats here. And we were flying this like rickety, cobbled together system after all these years of customizing it. So add to that, because because Advantus is headquartered in Jacksonville, every time a hurricane would come through, we would have to spin everything down, spin all the servers down, literally wrap them with plastic, make sure the backups were taken off site. Our phone systems all ran through there. So all of our satellite offices and warehouses had to shut down as well. Now, thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't had a big hurricane directly hit our offices, but at the time it was pretty obvious that we needed to move forward. I would say too that when we had at the time about 14,000 Crystal reports, which I don't know if you guys anyone uses Crystal,
Wow.
but that's not an exaggeration. We went through and tallied them, and hundreds of SQL tables, many of which were custom, and a number of what we grew to call black boxes, where we call a black box where only one developer knows what this one thing does. It's not documented anywhere, and it does something that's not traceable, and yet somehow the end result is what was desired. And so how do you fix it when it breaks, et cetera, et cetera? We had a lot of that. And really good team, just strapped with resources and kind of, we just kept kicking the can down the road. And then one weekend, I remember we had a SQL table that got corrupted, and I think the dev was just, he aged 10 years in 3 days trying to fix that. And so really in 2017, we started looking at a new platform.
Thank you, Bryan.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Didn't feel awesome at the time, but yeah.
Peggy, I know you've been in this industry for a long time.
Yep.
What kind of things do you see when a client realizes it's time to make a move and upgrade?
Well, Bryan just illustrated one of the most common ones where you've got basically a legacy type platform that you just can't cobble together anymore, or something disastrous has happened. So now you have to figure out what you're going to do from there. You can't find anybody to fix it. Because I think there's still people out there on old AS400 systems where they are literally married to the developer because they can't make any changes themselves. So that is probably one of the key pieces. As I mentioned earlier, I used to be a GP consultant, and GP is going away. So the trigger there is a lot of the platforms that we've known in the past simply aren't around anymore. There are a number of platforms that I've worked on in the past that don't exist anymore. They have gone away for whatever reason. So, key is your current platform is being sunsetted. Or you've simply outgrown your current platform. It may not be being sunsetted, but your business's needs no longer fit what the software does. So, very common ones. You've gotten to the point where you have acquired subsidiaries, and the consolidation process is not well supported in your current system. You've acquired subsidiaries that are overseas. Your current system doesn't support foreign currency. Your current system doesn't support having a subsidiary somewhere else that has significantly different tax and accounting requirements. So those are all things, and what happens a lot of times is people will hit those things, but it doesn't become a major turning point until the pain has gotten so bad of trying to cobble things together with the existing system that the pain of transitioning is less than the pain of continuing on your current system.
Or you promote someone to IT that doesn't really know what they're doing, and they're dumb enough to say yes, in my case.
Yeah, but Do you regret?
No,
No, see?
yeah, no, not at all. I mean, we kick the can down the road every year. And even before I was in IT, when I joined the company, people were already complaining about the system. And it's probably similar to a lot of your companies out there. There's little things that didn't work, or, oh, you have to do this one, Control, Alt, blah, 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 to make it work. But every year it was kind of like we were kicking the can down the road until it was really, the writing was on the wall that we knew if we didn't make a change, that plane that I described was going to crash.
Yeah. And so it's basically, it gets to a point where there's a tipping point in that, in your business setting, where you just can't continue. And a lot of it is honestly driven by growth. Because it started great, you get people on QuickBooks. And that was great when they were a $5 million company. Now they're a $50 million company, and they have 4 instances of QuickBooks that they have to consolidate on an Excel spreadsheet.
Yep. You'd be surprised how many companies, big companies, are running on QuickBooks. So Bryan, how did you come to choose NetSuite? What was your selection process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I mentioned, we knew we needed to get off-prem. So that was like one of the, when I say off-prem, off-premise, so in the cloud, essentially. My dad had, when we were younger, he taught us this way to make decisions, which was essentially, so this is kind of nerdy. I love my dad, he's awesome. We did other things, we went fishing and had fun, but he also taught us stuff like this. But he basically taught us that when you need to make a decision, write down all the things you care about. Like in this case, we wrote, it's got to be cloud-based, it's got to be flexible, it's got to be reliable, all these things that we care about. And then you weight those variables. So 1 to 5, 5 being really important, 1 being not really important, but it would be nice to have. And then you put your options out and you just score them. And you just say, well, how flexible is this one? How reliable is this one? Is this one cloud-based? And then you multiply those together, and it kind of helps you tease out which is the, quantitatively, dispassionately, which one is a better option. So we looked at NetSuite, we looked at Sage, we looked at Acumatica, we looked at Dynamics, we looked at SAP, only for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, big one.
And a couple other options, and just ran it through that matrix. We tried to loop in a lot of different people within the department, or within the company, a lot of different departments and divisions, so they could kind of have a say. In that process too, we had to be a little careful about what was truly a need versus a want, because we know that you're going to tick off someone or maybe multiple people, no matter what decision you make.
Yeah.
And really trying to determine what's going to be a business impact and customer impact versus just an internal annoyance.
So when you were going through that process, did you find that one particular, like in your case, I guess, NetSuite was the choice. Did you find that one particular product, as you went down the tick list, stood out? Or was
pretty immediately?
Yeah.
I mean, NetSuite stood up pretty quickly to us because it's been around for a really long time. Before Oracle bought it, it had been around for a while. And those pieces I just mentioned about scalability, flexibility, it was ranking really, really high pretty quickly. I think also there were a couple, so Acumatica was one, and I don't mean to like badmouth any ERPs here or any other platforms here. It was also pretty promising, but it was pretty new at the time.
Yeah.
And it was risky for me to feel like we could put our eggs in that basket. So yeah, I would say the NetSuite product stood up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I was asking that because that seems to be, whether it's NetSuite or another product, it seems to be, as people are doing software selection, that the right product will start standing out fairly quickly based on your needs. So, it sounds like you did a really strong job of figuring out what your needs are, at which point the right product kind of steps up on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think too, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but, and this is not like a NetSuite pitch or anything, just so you guys all know, you're going to come away thinking, wow, why did they pitch NetSuite so hard? That's just what we went with, and it's been fantastic for us, but the process is more kind of what we want to talk about. Price was one of those variables, and I'm sure for people that are building businesses, you look at, QuickBooks is a great option, there's a lot of other, great options too. For us, we have hundreds of employees and we need lots of licenses. price kind of scared us a little bit. And NetSuite's not horrible, but it was more expensive than what we were used to paying because we had an on-prem legacy old software that was relatively cheap. But one other thing we did was we performed an analysis to try and quantify downtime, try and quantify how much time we spent fixing the problem. And it turned out that it was actually a little bit more expensive to stay on our existing old platform than to move to the new one. And I think we quote sometimes Warren Buffett. He says about investing, price is what you pay, value is what you get. And it's the same thing, I think, when selecting software and an ERP, business software.
That's a really good point. I mean, I don't know how many companies do that analysis on what is it actually costing us to stay where we're at, or what opportunity cost we may be missing.
Right. Or what does it cost every time you get a sniffle of a hurricane in Florida, and now you're shutting everything down for across the country?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the implementation process. I mean, did you consider doing it yourself as a firm, hiring some folks, or outsourcing it to
so we did for about 10 seconds. We thought maybe we could do it ourselves. Back to that analogy of this plane, we looked at it as we've got this plane that's kind of cobbled together, still doing a good job. We're up in the air, we're alive, we're servicing customers, but it's hard. It takes a lot of work just to keep the plane going. The idea of simultaneously, and this is how it felt at the time, simultaneously building in midair a jet airliner, getting all the passengers over, all of our employees onto that, all by ourselves, just was very daunting. So I would say just for a little bit, we thought, can we do this ourselves? Again, thinking, and we're pretty cost conscious. We try and have like a Costco mentality internally. We don't have fancy buildings and fish tanks and stuff, but we wanted to be smart about that, financially. So we were a little concerned about if we bring a consultant on, will it be a lot of money? But again, we realized we needed that support. So we did think about doing it ourselves, but not for a super long time.
Peggy, have you seen anyone go at it alone?
I have. And the reason that I have is because usually they start down that road and then they need help. Because they get in and figure out that the system that they're going to is a lot more complex than, say, their current QuickBooks environment. And there are a lot of things as you go through the implementation. If you don't know what the various features are, what it does, you can turn something on, and with some of the things, you can't turn it back off again. So you can't really go, oh, let's try this and see what it does. There's a strong design process that happens up front, and a lot of companies who will try to self-implement aren't really aware of the amount of upfront design that needs to happen, and as well as the upfront design and the implementation piece, they're trying to do their regular jobs. So there tends to be a lack of focus, a lack of understanding of some of the complexities, and inappropriate attention to the upfront design. And what ends up happening then is they get kind of a quarter way or halfway into it, it's not working out well, and then they go and get a consulting firm to come help them get over the finish line, but there's a bunch of remediation you need to do then.
Yeah, some rework.
So yeah, there's invariably rework involved.
Yeah. Excellent. Bryan, if you were to do this again, or if you're going into an implementation, what would you recommend a firm do to prepare, or just through the actual execution of the project as it was going on? What have you learned? What did you do? What made it successful? That's many questions in one, so take it where you like. Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if anyone out there is looking at changing platforms, whatever. I'd be happy to be a resource, if you want to bounce questions off of me. We have a little bit of a unique experience because of every time we acquire a company, it's kind of like integrating, and re-implementing the software again and again. We've moved companies from QuickBooks, we've moved companies from Sage, we've moved companies from SAP, other companies, as we buy them. So looking back over the implementation of just our own move to NetSuite, I think a couple things stand out to me.
One is getting buy-in. We already talked about that a little bit, but getting the stakeholders involved, and that's just really kind of a fancy term for, who's going to use the system the most and who knows the processes the most to help advocate for what really matters. Yeah. So what we ended up doing is we had a team of about 8 to 10 people at any given time that we met every week. There's a really great book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, 4DX, that Franklin Covey did. And then they have this term called the cadence of accountability. And we implemented this idea of a cadence of accountability. Like every week we would meet as a team and have action items. Did you do this? Did we get this done? We met with the consultants, of course, pretty regularly. Yeah. So I think having a team that's dedicated, we weren't really dedicated totally because we still had to do the rest of our job, but that's committed and assigned to this particular project, to make this successful. Yeah. I think another couple of things that come to mind are just being aware of change management. So the idea of who moved my cheese, change is hard for people in different ways. And just to quote Warren Buffett again, I'm a big fan of his, but he talks about this with kind of markets rising and stuff, but you only know who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. And the idea, so the idea is some people are really competent at their job because of the system. They know the system really, really well. Yeah. But when you move systems, it exposes, they may not have really understood the fundamentals of what they were doing in the process or the business. Whether it's maybe accounting, they know how to click the buttons, but they don't know how to actually, balance the accounts, et cetera. So, change management, really talking through and understanding is a person having a problem because of the system or because they don't understand the underlying, nature of it. And then the other thing is just the sooner you can do it, the better. Don't delay if you can help it. And obviously, cash and finances are a big consideration in that and time. But as you said, if you start to get the writing on the wall, if you start to see that signal, start thinking about it sooner.
So internally, how did you, because sometimes not everybody's really on board, because from their perspective in their job, it's not broke. Right. So how did you work through those challenges?
Good question. So we typically just try to listen and validate, but quantify. What is this? Is this a feeling, or is this something that's really a hurdle? And is it something that you like done this certain way, or are you adaptable? So really trying to quantify that and write it down and restate, is this what I'm hearing? But we did have some people that just really struggled with it. And one of the key things we try and do is get the right people on the bus. And wherever the bus goes, I think that maybe Jim Collins coined that idea, and good to great, but wherever that bus goes, you're going to be okay because you've got the right people on the bus. And sometimes people realize, I should be on a different bus. So we did have to make a couple changes. Not anything's really huge, but talk through that and work that out.
I think for many it may be a career advantage. New skills, modern technology. I
mean, I felt that way myself, just learning NetSuite from the beginning. I don't know. I'm probably not a NetSuite expert, but I know it really, really well, enough to, be dangerous, I guess. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity had we not had, and our whole team, we had people, unfortunately, that we trained them on NetSuite, and they left because they now had this new skill that was in demand. And if any of my company staff is listening, don't listen to that part. But it did give them additional skills that made them more interesting in the market.
Well, I'll say this about Bryan. I was there. Bryan's the only VP on a project that was actually in there configuring, creating workflows, and doing
For
stuff.
better or worse.
It was good, yeah. But usually I get very nervous. But it was fantastic. So you're very hands-on, very involved. So that was really good. Last question before we go to Q&A. Any regrets? Anything you do differently? Hire a different firm?
Yeah, you really didn't. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. Other than doing it sooner, it's been a great platform for us. It's given us the flexibility. It's gotten rid of the black boxes. It's reliable. Yeah. We've been able to really we onboard people so much more quickly now. We've got people in Hong Kong and China and other places, and without having to spin up a VPN and set them up, they can just be working day one.
And they can work in their own language.
Yes, yeah, that's
True.
a big part. If you think you're going to be doing business in other currencies or in other languages in the near future, you should take that into consideration when looking at platforms. I don't know that I have any really strong regrets. I mean, it was a tough period for me personally because everyone I talked to, when we first started, when I was stressed out, I would, like late at night, I would doom scroll a little bit and Google ERP implementation failures and read about other people's misery and be like, well, at least I'm not them. But millions of dollars of value is lost regularly through failed implementations, or companies go out of business. We thankfully, again, because we had a great team and great consultants, and we just took things a little bit at a time, didn't have that. I think maybe the only regret I have is potentially like including a bit more people, because there were some people that probably could have had a say in certain pieces and features sooner, but I don't think that we realized that. I didn't realize that soon enough, and it was kind of a new experience for us, so I could have done that a little bit better.
Great, fantastic. Well, thank you. Now for Q&A. If anyone has a question they'd like to ask, any one of us or Brian, go ahead and take the mic from Becca.
This has been great. Thanks so much for your insights here. I always think back to that meme that surfaces every once in a while. What happens if we train people and they leave, and then someone says, well, what happens if we don't train them and they stay? And you had mentioned that some had left. Would you find that that's not the norm of people leaving once they're trained and upskilled and more kind of seem more valuable to the organization versus leaving? I know there's always a hesitation of how much should we invest in them and how much training should we give them? What if they go somewhere else? What are your thoughts to that? Yeah,
that's a really great question. And we probably found it more in the IT group, but it would probably be the same for all the other departments. And kind of philosophically, my approach has tried to be, let's make sure that we're taking care of people, we're paying market at least, for that skill set. And when the skill set improved, we have a way of essentially reevaluating that and saying, is this person now upskilled to a point where they should be making more? What's their market rate? We're not perfect at it, but we do have it as part of our process. And we encourage people to talk to us and say, hey, I'm feeling some pressure financially. I know I have these skills. I'm starting to look. And having that dialogue is super important, I think. One other thing, too, is we do try and encourage people to learn more, and we invest in training, which has that risk of, you've invested, maybe it's management training, maybe it's software training. But again, we would much rather keep that person, as long as they're a good fit, than lose them. And so the cost of losing someone is so significant with retraining and culture, and you don't know that the next person's going to be a great fit. It's so much better if we can have that dialogue about the person, feeling like they're underpaid or they're overskilled versus what their pay is. But yeah, I think there were a couple people that I think that happened within our company where they left after the process of moving because they felt like they could make more elsewhere. But it was pretty limited looking back.
Do you think that the fact that, I'm going to ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think
You have to go sit in the audience.
Do you think that the fact that you included a lot of people up front in the process helped the retention after the fact?
I think so. Yeah, I think when this is the case for anything, like when you feel like you've got a say, you feel vested in it, and you have a reason to help it be successful. There was one part of our implementation that dealt with demand planning. So I don't know if any of you guys use demand planning software, but basically forecasting and determining how much inventory to buy and that kind of thing. There were a couple people that we didn't loop in that we should have, and really they never fully bought into the solution. They ended up doing a lot of spreadsheets, which is fine. If they want to do spreadsheets, that's great. It's just a little bit additional work than from our perspective. We tried also to not be super heavy-handed in saying you've got to use the system for this particular thing if it wasn't a must. We were okay with using spreadsheets, just not 14,000 crystal reports.
14,000, that's great.
Now you're down to 0 crystal reports.
Right. But now we have like 2,000 safe searches in NetSuite. Still better than 13,000.
Yeah, it's an improvement.
So for strategy and steering on your acquisitions, what makes or breaks an attractive acquisition target, and what is your time frame from LOI, letter of intent, to a closed deal?
Yeah, this is a great question. We could probably have a whole nother panel discussion about this. Basically, in a nutshell, we typically do asset purchases, and we have kind of three categories of acquisitions that we do, or names for them. Sometimes it's a brand that's just getting started, but doesn't have the infrastructure to do EDI and work with the retailers. There's quite a bit. I don't know if anyone does any work with retailers or any customers that have those kind of requirements. They won't even look at you if you don't have a vendor number or can do EDI. So we have some that are kind of just starting out. We have some that are, we call them like a bump in the road acquisition, where you have an owner who maybe wants to retire or has a health issue, or they've had some setback. We had one customer, or one acquisition that they lost Walmart. Walmart was their anchor customer, and basically was covering making the company profitable. They lost that customer, and so they were like, well, we need to sell. They got a little upside down. And then the third one is what we call a long tail, and these are just Advantus terms, by the way, like we just made these up, but a long tail acquisition where it's a pretty boring product, but it's got a really long lifespan. And just an example is, if anyone's been to Sonic to buy hamburgers or drinks there, the people skate around with the little coin changers. Mm-hmm. We own that. We bought that company, and it's been around for decades and decades. And that was the first acquisition that I led, and it's hopefully going to be around as long as we've got coins and Sonic and Subways that still take those. Those are kind of the three categories we typically work in. We're not really good at, if a company is like a rocket ship, and like valuing that is pretty tricky for us because we're just not great at it, and we're not going to pay 10 times some multiple. To answer your other question about timing, we can move pretty fast. That's one thing that we pride ourselves on. So we've got a pretty, we call it a fortress balance sheet, where we're very conservative, so we can act quickly if we need to. In fact, the acquisition that I came with to join the company, I think it closed in like 30 days. Wow. From the commitment, from the LOI to the, within maybe 60 days. It was really fast. Now, I was on the receiving end, so I wasn't, behind the scenes on that, but I've seen us work in that capacity and move pretty quickly. We try and do really simple term sheets with the LOI if we can, so we get agreement before we send it to the lawyers and spend all the time and money, developing out the actual paperwork. And the faster when we can move quickly, it's better for everybody. The customers don't experience any downside, ideally, when we move quickly. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
So I've worked in the SaaS environment for the last 10 years in sales operations, and ERP is a big part of what we do. I've used SAP, I've used Oracle prior to NetSuite, and NetSuite was by far the better one. With this big push for AI, how do you see that affecting NetSuite? And for those of us that don't really have a lot of training with the AI, where's the best way to get that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do you guys want to tackle that? Because you probably went to the recent. I know a little bit about it, but
Yeah, so training on the UI or just experience.
Sorry, did he say UI or AI?
AI.
Okay. Yeah, I think the AI side. I mean, they did just update their UI with the Redwood piece, but
Yeah, a lot of that's still being in development, but in terms of artificial intelligence, you mean like with NetSuite, they're starting to roll it out. I think a lot of it's not concept, but being worked on right now. But you'll start to see things where the reconciliation, bank recs, and is going to be more automated. AI is going to be able to find relationships that a human can't. You don't have to write all the rules. We also see where AI is going to start helping generate documents out of the system that may go to like a dunning letter or other type of communications with your customers or vendors.
I'm seeing it in some of the some of the AP automation tools, where as it brings in vendor invoices, for example, it starts learning as this particular vendor does this, or particular vendor, et cetera. So I'm seeing that starting on the incoming transactions in a lot of cases, where it's being more predictive in terms, and it learns as it goes.
Just kind of related to that, I know it's not the question you asked exactly, but when we were doing our implementation, there were some people that were afraid of losing their jobs because of the implementation, that the system did things faster and automated. And what we tried to teach them, and it's kind of related to AI, and I bring it up just because we're looking more at implementing more AI, and that's a pretty common fear. But what we try and tell our people is we'd much rather have the robot do the thing that's automated and robotic and let the human do the harder things. And we'll find other things for our people to do. And some of it's learning AI or learning the tool. How do you actually apply it? I've gone to a couple trainings on AI generally, just so I don't want to be like one of those grandpas, no offense if you're in the room, but it's like, what's this iPhone? I don't want to be like that when I'm older, so I'm trying to learn and apply AI. And NetSuite has some tools to generate content, like marketing content about an item. I've seen that. But I would just encourage anyone that's concerned about that or has a team that's concerned about it. Our experience has been the system typically results in more productivity and more opportunities for people inside the company if they're given the tools to learn the system, including AI, I think.
It's one of the advantages of software as a service too, is because NetSuite, other ERPs will be doing the same thing. You'll just get these improvements as you go. You don't have to go through a whole new implementation. They just roll it out. So no additional cost.
We did have to, real quick, we did have to put together an internal policy on AI, like when people can use ChatGPT, when people can use these tools. Because there's some legal risk out there if you don't know what you're doing, including on the coding side, but also on just content development.
Good point. Any other questions? Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We've really enjoyed having you. Please stick around and socialize and come talk to with us if you like. And we just really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.